That's what's exciting about experimenting with film as a teenager. Is you just go out and do it, you come up with creative solutions.
Deb Patz has been in the industry for 35 years. She's worked on everything from children's programming to working with the IMAX space team. Deb has written a book called Write, Shoot, Edit, a complete guide for teenage filmmakers. Welcome to the show, Deb.
Thanks, Forrest. Great to be here.
Let's talk about your book and talk about the structure of Write, Shoot, Edit.
Thanks. That's my new book. It's out in July this year, 2017. It's written specifically for teenagers making their first movies. And when I talk about teenagers, I'm talking right back, we're talking middle school right up to the end of high school. Because that's the era when you're really working on exploring, and you should explore. You don't necessarily have to put everything up on YouTube and explore in public. You can actually just explore with your friends, and that's where this one's involved. So it's a unique structure, the book, because it's write, shoot, edit. It's 3 words, but it's also written so that you can either read it as a writer, a director, DOP, which is the shoot section, or as an editor. And that way you can read the whole thing as a book by itself, or if you choose just one of those paths, you read certain chapters and you read them in a variety of different orders. And what else is kind of cool about it is that there are some chapters that each one of those paths reads, but you're approaching it from a different chapter, so you're approaching it from a different point of view. So even though you read that chapter maybe twice, if you read it through the paths, you actually have a different hat on at that time, and you see a slightly different perspective in going through it. And that's the intention, because really filmmaking has always been a collaborative art. When you get into the professional arena and you've got 50 or 150 people on the film set, you realize you're only doing a small slice of it, but everybody's coming at it from a different point of view. I remember working on a production once, and a camera assistant came in once, or a focus puller came in once to the office and said, you know, I saw Avalon last night. That was like a focus puller's movie. And I thought, wow, I've never seen a focus puller's movie before. But obviously we have all these different perspectives. So that's really kind of how the book works too, in that you're either writer, shooter, or you're an editor. So can I keep going?
Yes, absolutely.
Great, yeah, because I just realized I'm on a roll here.
Yes, keep going. Keep going. It's awesome.
So the other part of it that I do is that there's a lot of threes in it. I mean, we've got, rule of thirds, we've got 3-point lighting, we've got also, I take the whole creative process and dive that down into 3 parts, because each, and I'm talking about being creative as a writer or as a director or as an editor, in that the first stage of the creative process is like the wild inventor brain. It's where you're coming up with wild and crazy ideas that are, this is the part where everybody gets really nervous about, oh, these are probably really bad ideas, but they tend to be really good ideas. They just haven't been voiced yet. And you have to give that creative head a chance to actually have their voice. And then once you finish that pass of things, then you would move on to a more structured edit. So I've got that as, I've called that Dr. Structure, which is where you actually take those ideas and then see how you can build that into a more logical structure that follows certain industry rules or industry customs that we've used. And in that time, it's not just editing, because it is another creative part of the brain. It just has a different way of thinking. And then the third round that you would go through is what I call nitpicky editor. And that's the person who goes through and goes, oh, typo, oh, formatting, oh, got to make sure you actually don't have the boom in the shot and all that sort of thing. So basically, you end up cycling through these 3 phases the whole way through. And so understanding that concept of the creative process really helps you go, oh, okay, I have to make sure I have time in order to go through those. It means also you have to do basically everything 3 times. There's no such thing as writing a script once. You have to write it 3 times, which is the bad news. But the good news is it's also quite freeing.
Right. And a lot of younger kids tend to not write a script, or young filmmakers. They just go out with a camera. So I believe that's great advice for, you're talking middle schoolers here, right? And up into high school? I
Absolutely.
mean, most of them go out with their GoPros or their cell phones and just shoot.
Yep.
How important is the script for even a kid at that age?
Well, certainly there are people that want to go out there and shoot. There are also kids that want to actually write scripts and not actually shoot. So this is an opportunity where you can start getting those people together, because why not? You're going to be able to collaborate at some point anyway. So if you want to just go out and shoot, that's great. This book is a bit more for scripted movies. So you actually have to have some sort of plan in mind, because if you're doing the director's track, you don't start with, chapter 1, start rolling the camera, because what you're doing is you have to break down the script and find out what order you're going to do them in and who you're going to be hiring for the different roles. So there is prep work involved. If there's no script, then it becomes a little bit more difficult. So it is definitely more for scripted movies in that case. But that's where you start bringing your friends in and start tapping into the talent, which is exactly what we do in the industry. Is you hire the people that are really good at writing scripts, and you hire the people that are really good at directing, and you bring them together and you see what magic you can come up with.
So you'll make the kids start thinking a little bit about getting the right person for the role instead of getting their buddy for the role, perhaps.
Yes, kind of. And at the same time, what happens, but of course, when it comes to shooting, is that you can't always exactly hire, you can't exactly audition and hire exactly who you want on screen.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to actually shooting, what's going to happen is there's going to be somebody's dance competition or somebody's soccer game, and they can't actually commit. So that's where the director has to have the flexibility to realize, oh my goodness, we have to change that role. It's no longer going to be played by my best friend. It's going to be played by my mother. Okay, so you have a gender change, you have an age change, and so you end up having to rewrite the script. And that's a very fun process, actually. It sounds frightening, but it actually can be a lot of fun, because it can release certain humor that you go, holy cow, I didn't realize that I could do that. And so the journey, and that's what's exciting about experimenting with film as a teenager, is that you start making all these, you just go out and do it, you start making the changes, you realize the things that you're going to make, the problems that you come across, and you come up with creative solutions. And you can use any type of material, any type of technology at all. So I don't go hugely into the technology in the book, because it might be a GoPro, it might be a cell phone, it may be, you know what, I have no editing possibility at home. My computer's not good enough to do any editing. Okay, fine. Design a one-shot movie. There's like tons of one-shot movies out there. There's even, I believe, a competition for one-shot feature films. So you find out what you can do, and then you work with it. I mean, there was a really great video game called Myst many years ago. And that was in an era where we could only get like this much of the screen could be video. And so and of course they wanted it to be lush and exotic, and they had these beautiful, beautiful images. And you would open the book and there would be this one little piece of the screen that actually moved, because that's all they physically could do. So it's working with the restrictions you have and still make it happen. Because I mean, in the space program, for goodness sake, they went up into space before, in the 60s, before we had the exotic computers we have today. It's all possible.
And I just want to talk briefly about your work on the IMAX movies with space.
Right. That was so much fun. Oh my goodness. If I couldn't have been a filmmaker, I would have been an astronaut. And so I had to make that path choice at one point in my life. And I remember giving up science, which actually made my science teacher cry, because I was doing really well in it. But so I went into filmmaking. And then I managed to come across one of the 5 people who work at the space team. And I basically, not literally, but threw myself down in front of them going, I must work with you guys someday. And they went, no, I'm sorry, Deb. You do drama, we do documentary. Never going to happen. And then I got a call a year later that said, we're doing our first drama. Would you help? I'm like, the space team is calling me to help. So I ended up working with them, and we actually I was working on Mission to Mir at the same time as working on a space drama. So, day one at the office, it was trying to figure out, okay, you get the film in the camera, you get it up, shoot it up in the space shuttle, goes on to Mir. how do you get the film back to Earth to process it? There's the problem. It's like, okay, I love this job. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But again, we had to. It's the same kind of problems that you come across as you would as a teenager. You have to now make reasonable facsimile of, we were doing a space movie, and it's like, okay, we're talking IMAX, we're talking space team. They want it to be very realistic, but I can't actually go shoot in space. So I have to find locations on Earth that would plausibly be in space in 20 years. And so that challenge, rather than you going, oh, well, that's impossible, it excites you and it makes you go, okay, I'm going to try to figure this out. And we did. And so that's the type of thing that gets very exciting. And that's the brilliance of working with movies and figuring things out.
Right. That's awesome, Deb. I'm a big space guy, so I'm listening to your story going, oh, that's so cool. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, can they do that, and how can they do that?
Absolutely. DebPatz.com is my website. I have a blog there called a Film and Ink blog, which I should post a little more often than I do, but I do post now and then. And of course, I'm also on Facebook and I'm on Twitter. And I think that's about all for the places that I am. But more than welcome to connect with me.
All right. Thank you very much, Deb. Appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you very much, Forrest.